Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas. Let's go. G'day guys, my guest on this episode is Marilyn Getas Byrne. Marilyn originally started her career as a television news anchor. She is now sharing her own personal challenges, tragedies and triumphs to help inspire others to believe that they can overcome and find their way through hard times. It was a real privilege to have Marilyn share her personal story. Here is our conversation. What's a little bit of your backstory? I know you ended up working as a news anchor.
Mhm.
How did you get to that point? Were you raised in California?
I was raised in Pacifica, California, just south of San Francisco, just about 5 miles south. And I was born into a family of older siblings, and my parents were, I think my mom was 44 and my dad was 50 when I was born. And in 1970, that was, I think, a little more unusual. My siblings were 20, 16, and 13 when I was born. So they had this whole family, and then I came along in retirement, and I kept them young, as they like to say. And they were married 63 years until my dad passed away, and then my mom passed away 4 years
Wow,
later. So
63 years.
yes, yes. So I feel like I was one of the lucky ones squeaking into this family that had so much love to give. They really did, and they welcomed me. I always felt like a blessing and not a mistake. So so that was a good start. And so anyway, I was a volleyball player and played in high school and college. And I started going into speech and communications. And I had a professor who said, when the camera's on, you just kind of bump it up a little bit more. And there's something about an extra sparkle that happens when the camera's on. And he said, I really want you to go over to the TV and radio department. And I was at San Francisco State University, and they had a fabulous TV and radio program with a studio right in house. And they were kind of known for getting college students from college right into a job. That was their thing. They had an incredible debate team. So I did that. I went over, and I was so grateful that I had this professor that saw something. And so went over to the TV and radio department, started taking classes, about the broadcast interview, what it was like to be on set, the news set. And it kind of took off from there. I got an internship at the local CBS affiliate in San Francisco. So I did everything from fetch coffee to working the assignment desk, answering phone calls, aligning crews to it is actually kind of the heartbeat of the newsroom, the assignment desk. But I just worked really hard. And I remember there were interns there who sort of hid away and filed mail all day. And I remember thinking, this is my one shot. I have to get out there and really, stretch myself, get out of my comfort zone and go talk to people and talk to reporters and photographers and ask them about, what is this all about and how do I go from here to do what you do? And so I would shadow them, and the news director took notice of that. And I started my first job in the Monterey market, which is very close to where I live now. So this is sort of home base.
Full circle.
Yeah, full circle for sure. And I loved it. I loved it. It was, storytelling and adventure and flying by the seat of your pants. A lot of excitement and a lot of there are dull days too. I mean, one day you're rappelling out of a military helicopter, and the next day you're standing in a lettuce field talking about why lettuce is 1 cent higher today. So it's kind of a mixed bag. But I really, really enjoyed the camaraderie. I liked racing the clock every day. That's a motivator for me to have a very stiff deadline. And there was a performance aspect of it, but all the while being as much of yourself as you could be. So It was a great time of life. And then I was promoted from there to, actually went across the street to another competing station and became an anchor, and then was promoted from there to the Baltimore Washington market, WBAL, which was the NBC affiliate in Baltimore.
I
And
love it that you started as that intern. It's always like the interns. There's kind of a respect there. You know, it's often the intern for like some writers or something like that, that they're actually the go-to people because they have like the they have the lay of the land in the whole place, even though they're in this kind of starting position. They potentially have the contacts and the seems like that's a great place to start from. And then from there, you're just filling yourself with all these experiences and like you say, doing things under time pressure. Was there ever moments uh, where you had to deal with stuff in the moment? I just talk about it a bit because, you know, I played in bands in the UK and often it was the moments where things went wrong on stage where the most kind of rapid self growth happened when I had to deal with stuff in the moment when the stakes are very high. So in those circumstances where you're in these different scenarios, was there any kind of things that went wrong?
yes, yeah, oh, for sure, all the time. And it's kind of funny. You learn something about yourself in those times. I think I tend to, when all hell breaks loose, so to speak, get really calm. And it's sort of, I don't know if it's just really being present in that it's that moment of it's go time. You know, it's you have to, you're on the air. There, you know, hundreds of thousands of people watching, and you just have to keep going. There have been times when the teleprompter goes out, and
Mm,
that's why you always have scripts on the set. You know, you have something there that you can go to because you just don't know when that might happen, or someone's rolling that teleprompter a little too slow or a little too fast. And so you have to really be aware of what's going on, or there's breaking news and there's a producer in your ear. You've got the little IFB and they're telling you, we're dropping the next story. There's a fire in downtown Baltimore. So you are, as you're reading a script about high blood pressure, you
Yosh.
are, you're listening and absorbing this information about something totally different. And so that was always interesting to me, even with the playback and watching myself, because you think, oh my gosh, you know, I was totally somewhere else, but somehow able
Mm.
to keep going. So, but those are the things you learn on the fly. And certainly 9/11 was a biggie for all of us on every level. But I was in Baltimore at that time, and I remember we had just finished our morning newscast, and I went down to the newsroom and went to my desk, and all of a sudden, you know, we were watching the live feeds from New York and watching those planes go into the Trade Center. So those are moments where you are truly tested, because obviously, personally, we're all scared, and then you go into action, and you got to work. I think we worked 14 hours straight, under enormous stress,
Mm.
and professional stress. I mean, there was so much going on as you're trying to deliver the news of the day and do it responsibly, and make sure we have the right guests on, who have the expertise to be able to talk about what was going on there. So, but in those moments, when those kinds of things are going wrong in the world, and you're trying to, you know, come together, collect yourself quickly, come together as a group. We all have a mission, in that day, and in that moment. So those are you're right, those are the times that I think you kind of realize what your colleagues are made of, and what you're made of, and what is that mission. It's to inform the public, and to do the right thing. And I think I'm very grateful that I was a part of that world at a time when there was a lot of cohesiveness.
That's a huge thing to be able to kind of almost separate yourself because we were all impacted by that
Yeah.
that event across the globe. But you're having to, like you say, separate yourself in a way, process it at the same time as doing your job. That's
Mhm.
no small feat to be able to go into that mode. But it sounds like you also had this ability to just kind of um, focus, like you say, this ability to stay calm. Where do you think that came from?
I think that came from my parents. I really do. They had just this incredible resilience about them. My dad was a World War II pilot because my parents were older. So I had parents who were born in the 1920s, that greatest generation. So I watched them navigate things. I think they had seen things in their life that put in perspective that knowing of not to sweat the small stuff.
Mm,
And they had a way of celebrating life and enjoying people. And so I feel like they showed me the balance of, when you have to get serious and you take care of business. And but I didn't see anybody kind of freaking out or, um, um, there were some big things that they had to deal with. And they they had a sense that everything was going to be okay in the end. So even though it was scary in the moment, I think they always had that knowing that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to everything. And
mm.
this too will pass.
I was just about to say that this too shall pass thing.
Yes.
My dad says that to me often as well. He's got quite a calm kind of thing in tense moments as well. Um, but in terms of like, this is a bit of a different one because it sounds like your job was very fulfilling in a way,
Mhm.
and so it's perhaps not your case of kind of burnout. When you're doing something that's not necessarily fulfilling, but at the same time you're working so hard. So then some health issues kind of derailed things a little bit. Was that around that time or that was later?
Yeah. It was later, but I was working back on the West Coast and I was an evening anchor at a CBS affiliate here. And kind of actually at the original station where I got my start as a reporter. I came back and I was working as an anchor at 5, 6, and 11 o'clock p.m. And I I wasn't feeling great, and I kept going to doctors saying I'm just feeling really fatigued, and they'd say, well, you have two little kids and you
Mm,
and you have a job, and I said, no, I know all that. I know what that tired feels like, but something feels off. And so anyway, I kind of kept checking things out and I finally, I kept going down these rabbit holes and nothing materialized. And so I was, thankful for that. And then one day I found a lump in my breast, my left breast. And had just turned 40, which is not the time that, I mean, I just never in my wildest dreams thought that that would be a new course in my life, uh, a totally new direction, something that would set me on this path that um, was just going to take me on a wild ride. I didn't see that coming. I don't think people do, and then there's that innate gift that my parents gave me of okay, don't get me wrong, have totally we all have our human moments of going into the fear and going into panic and going, all of those things, which I did. I was really scared when I learned that it was breast cancer. Um, so and with two little kids, a seven
mm,
year old and a 4 year old. So, and thank goodness my husband, such a supportive guy. And so I did have a lot of support around me, but I think it just makes you just can't believe it, young and healthy and, former athlete and all the things that go with feeling sort of top of my game. And then this definitely did sideline me. I had a double mastectomy with lymph nodes involved. There were cancerous lymph nodes, which was scary to find that out, and 20 rounds of chemo,
mm.
a like 7 month journey with chemo, and then I had an 18-inch blood clot, which I didn't even know was was possible. from the jugular across the chest down the right arm, where they had the PICC line that administered the chemo. Um, and that was throwing clots to the lungs. I was really, really sick at that time and in the hospital, not knowing if I'd ever make it out of that hospital. So, and then I had, radiation and full hysterectomy with ovaries gone at 40. So my body took a big hit. Um, the thing that's interesting is, people along the way tell you fight, fight, fight. And those are really important words. You have to fight. You've got to dig in. You're in the fight. But I really, the secret that I learned was that the greatest power, I think, came with embracing vulnerability
Mm.
and sitting with those moments of uncertainty and, just being with it. And sometimes we can't just, someone said to me, you have to sit and, excuse the vernacular, but you got to sit in the shit.
Absolutely.
And you got to be
Absolutely.
there. You got to be there for a while,
Mm.
And she said, "You always love to get right back to Disneyland." You know? And I thought about that. I thought it's true. I just kind of wanted to keep and staying positive is really important. I'm not, but there's also something, um, and I think you do, but you have to feel the real feelings too along the way and kind of sit with that fear for a little bit and realize, I mean, this is real. This is real. I have a life-threatening disease. And sometimes you can feel alone in that too. Everyone around you's walking around and you know that they're not having that same experience. It's so personal, so deep and scary. And so I think sometimes you can feel alone. You can feel
Mm.
alone. And now I'm a patient navigator helping other cancer patients. So I get paired with them as they're newly diagnosed. So I can help walk the journey with them. And I think they feel comforted not only seeing that I'm a survivor and it can happen, um, and most likely will happen, and but that there's somebody there who actually understands.
I, th-
So it's a
I,
good
th-
thing for me.
I think that must be very reassuring. It's like, it's not a great analogy, but it's trying to teach someone to throw a basketball if they've never played basketball themselves. It's like, I'm sure them knowing what you've been through must be very, very reassuring to have you by their side. Um, I know as a parent that there's a certain level of endurance in parenting. So I cannot imagine what that must have been like for you. If you're going through something that's serious by yourself, you can sort of, try and soldier on your own. But when you have two little ones, that must have been extraordinarily difficult.
It really it was in a lot of ways. I have an incredible husband. We've been married 29 years, and he just kept saying, "What can I do? What can he wanted to just what do I do?" You know? And I think my answer was just keep things as normal as possible and keep coaching little league and keep bringing them to the park. I mean, if there were days that I had to be in bed, um, I think it was kind of hard watching them going in and out of the door. I remember thinking, there they go again. Oh, they're back. Oh, there they go again. It was like I was suddenly not a part of that foursome.
Mm.
And that was challenging from my perspective, but I was so relieved and grateful that I had that kind of support. And I know not everybody has that. So I was very aware, and I remember feeling a lot of gratitude that I had this partner who really stepped up. And even though he was so scared at times, that sometimes it was hard for him to maybe be in it with me about where we were in our fears, or but he could stay busy with the kids. It was a good distraction for him
Mm.
too. And so anyway, I think that was a big comfort. We also have two kids who they're funny and they're so sweet. Our son would come, when I was bald for a long time, and he would, he was 8 years old, and he'd come over and kiss the top of my head and say, Mom, I love that bald head. And he wanted to make me feel better, and our daughter was always covering her eyes saying, Mom, is your hat on? Because she had a harder time, looking at me. And I respected that. I kind of I until she was comfortable with me just kind of, being out there in the house without my hat on. But they would take pictures of me. There was a funny filter. It was called Cam Wow. It was before Snapchat and all that stuff. And I think we downloaded it onto my phone. The kids didn't have phones of their own. But downloaded onto my phone, and it would distort your face, and I would just roll with it. I'd say, oh my gosh, let's put on the alien, filter. And can you imagine Mom's bald head with the alien filter? And we would, we just went with it. And we, used humor, and we did talk about it. Didn't give them too much information, but I did include them in a lot of the information, because a doctor told me, she said what she had found was um, that a lot of kids, it's better to be as honest as you can with your children, appropriately honest, because if you're sneaking around and talking to doctors and jumping into the closet and doing all of those things, their imaginations will create a much worse scenario,
Mm.
even worse than what you're going through. So I really took that to heart. And I think they have told me now, they're 18, and my son will be 22 tomorrow. Um, they have told me that was really helpful for them to feel a part of things. So I
That's
think the way to navigate that.
there's so much there because this leaning into it, the humor of it and just embracing again, it's this leaning into what you're saying earlier about the vulnerability of it. You could have shied away or covered yourself up, but you just leant into the humor of it and embraced that discomfort of it all. And then it's amazing when kids just put air under our wings. And I've
Mm,
been challenging myself a little bit as a parent too, with exactly what you're saying in terms of being more honest. There's a fine line, but
mhm,
it really resonates what you said in terms of if you don't give them that honesty, one, they will know something's going on, there's a vibe, but
mm.
then they will invent their own scenarios which can potentially be much more, there's something going on and it's my fault or whatever, as opposed to just having like, being able to deal with what's in front of them. Easier said than done, but it's amazing that during that time you're able to lean into all those things.
Well, and I think that again goes back to my parents, and the way they talked to me, and the way they included me in their discussions. And I think there's an opportunity too here for these kids to learn. They learn so much by being able to ask questions and not feel shamed for their questions, or being able to. And my son, I remember he said, Mom, when they take out, first we thought maybe I would have a lumpectomy. And he said, Mom, when they take out the lump, what do they fill it back up with? Styrofoam balls? He was so innocently curious about, like, what does the doctor do then? And so we could have, even in that moment, everything was so raw. We were still able to we just laughed. That humor saved us. And there were those little times where they would just say something so funny, and it was so innocent, but they felt free to talk about it. And I think that really helped a lot. I'm sure they were scared, and I know they were scared at times. Um, I remember one moment where I just got this sense that I should go to the kids' school. I just felt it was when I had already had numerous surgeries and, chemo, and a lot was going on. And I went to the school, and my son was sitting out on a bench alone. Everybody else was in class. And he just looked at me like, what are you doing here? And I said, I just felt like I should come and just give you guys a hug. And I never did, I didn't do that. I wasn't going to interrupt their school day. but there was just a strong pull, and I could not believe he was sitting there alone. And he said, Mom, I'm just so scared about your surgery coming up. And he started to cry. And we just sat there on that bench. And I told him, I said, I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to get through this. And I'm not going to crawl into bed and pull the covers over my head. We're going to do this. We're going to do this together. And, but I said, I understand. I know you're scared, and that's understandable. And so we just sat there for a little bit, and we had a big hug. And I realized in that moment, I have always been his worry holder.
Mm.
And I have always told our kids that sharing, never to worry alone. That's kind of a rule in our house. Don't worry alone. And that sharing your worry isn't burdening another person. The other person can help carry the load, and it makes it bearable. We've been kind of sticklers about saying that to our kids over the years. Don't worry alone. And so I realized that, I've always been his worry holder. And then I have my own worry holders. I have friends and people I can go to and say, hey, I'm really scared about this. And they're sharing that load. And I think that was a huge learning for me to do that, because that's hard for me too, to ask, or I don't want to burden anybody either. But I really learned through that experience how important it is to share, to ask, and even now in today's world that can feel overwhelming and a little scary. Um, I realize, okay, I can ask. I know the people I can call on and say, can we talk? Can we get together? There's such power in that, and there's so much support in that. And so I definitely know that whole process, as scary as it was with the cancer, our kids have learned that over the years. And I see them doing that now in their young adult lives, where they're creating their own support groups and their own paths with honesty. It's really beautiful to watch.
That's amazing in terms of that time and these huge lessons that came through from that from that time for them. Like that's just invaluable in term. But again, that's a credit to you for like leaning into the stuff of it and asking for help, but also being a strong parent at the same time. Like it's a tricky balance. But I love the humor aspect because it sort of takes the pressure out. It releases the pressure out of the room. Like my son's done that as well. Like very
Mhm.
short thing, but I backed into a car here in Germany and I had to go get him from school. Like I backed into an illegally parked car.
Mhm.
And in Australia, like, because I had to get him and I was worried he was going to be alone, I left a note and I basically said, I'm just coming straight back.
Mhm.
Um, and then basically somebody reported me as like fleeing the scene.
Oh no. Oh
I'm
God.
not, I won't go into the whole thing,
Yeah,
but
no, I want to, this is good. Good stuff.
so the German law is, that if anything happens, you have to stay there and report it immediately, even if you've just like scratched a car.
Okay.
So anyway, the police called me when I was picking him up from school and said, you have to get to the police station. And I was like, oh, no worries. I was coming back anyway and it's fine. I have my insurance and stuff. And they're like, no, it's very serious. You've been accused of like fleeing. So
Oh.
exactly like you're saying, this is why it reminded me. I was trying to keep my boy was in the car. He knew something was up. He's getting worried. I'm trying to sort of protect him, but I'm freaking out myself because I
Mhm.
have to go to the police station and I'm supposed to go to work and stuff. Anyway, so I get to the police station and I'm trying to squeeze the car into a very small parking spot at the police station. And my boy just looked at me and he said, Papa, wouldn't it be funny if you hit that car right now?
I
And it,
love it.
and I could just breathe. I could just take a moment and
Yeah.
and
You
I
can
just
breathe
laughed.
again. Oh God.
And I was like, that would be hilarious if I backed into that car right now, you
Oh, I
know?
love it. I love it.
And so my point is, he just completely, and then, I had to walk in and deal with it. It was all fine. But like, I just remember that moment because he did exactly what you're saying. He popped the pressure valve for a moment, and I could just like lean into the humor. So that's the power of humor in these, these
Absolutely.
situations.
Absolutely. And I think, and then even when you go back later, probably that night, you're talking about it after the fact, and then
You
it
laugh
gets,
again.
it's laugh again. You laugh even harder. It's so embarrassing, but I had after my hair was starting to grow back, and the
Mm.
kids called it my Einstein phase because it was like wild. And I was driving them to school, and we lived, I'm not kidding, a half a mile to the school. And I jumped in the car with pajamas. It was one of those like late mornings. My husband was out of town. The kids are getting, my daughter's tooth falls out. It was one of those just wild mornings. They can't find their socks. And so we pile into the car, and I'm really low on gas, like way low. And I've never run out of gas, but I thought we're right around the corner. It's fine. So anyway, I'm in leopard print pajamas.
With the
They're like
Einstein.
really cozy pajamas. They're leopard print. And I've got my Einstein hair, and we run out of gas. And the car is sputtering. And my son just looks at me and he said, "There's no way." And I go, "Yeah, it's happening." So we pull over. It's a busy road. So I tell the kids, go off into this ditch and run, along the side of the road and get into the school, and I'll be okay. I had no shoes, no wallet, no phone, no nothing. So I'm standing there like a goofball, and the kids are going, my son's, "What about you? Are you going to be okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. I'm fine." I'm thinking, yeah, what about me? I'm going to be, humiliated on the side of the road. So of course, every parent's driving by, everybody saw me. It was hysterical. And I'm looking in the back for a pair of sandy flip-flops from, my beach flip-flops. And a friend drove by and picked me up, and went home, got a gas can, changed real quickly, but I popped my head into the kids' classrooms. I wanted them to know, look, I'm okay, because my son thought, how are you going to get home? What's going to happen to you? And later that night, we just got hysterical. We were laughing and I said, "Can you imagine your mother out there on that highway with those pajamas and my wild hair?" And the kids go, "Mom, we did not know what was going to happen to you. We were so worried." And I said, "I know." And I said, "Well, what's funny about worry?" I said, "Whatever comes down the pike, we will handle." And it was a good opportunity to remind them that everything they've done in their lives up to that point, they've overcome. We've all
Mm.
overcome because we're here today. We've overcome it. We have 100% track record for overcoming. So I said, just remember that, like, that even though that was felt really kind of hairy, kind of crazy in the moment, we it was all okay. It was all okay in about 15 minutes. So we laughed about, we had a good laugh, but then we could talk about, how I know you were so scared and worried for me, but and my son said, "Mama, I knew you were okay because you did cancer, you could do anything." So those are those embedded lessons along the way that are so precious. There are a lot of cancer patients who tell me, "I feel the same way. Cancer is the worst thing that ever happens to you, and it can be the best thing that happens to you because it drives home the preciousness of life."
That contextual thing is so important when you put things in context. I mean, it's hilarious because I can sort of see you on the side of the road there. And it's funny how resourceful we get in those moments. You're like, do I have a sandwich from 2 days ago in the car, or, looking for the flip flops? But
Totally.
but
Oh,
the moral there about the contextual thing again with the kids, it's like, let's look at this on face value relative to what we've already been through. And
yes.
it's so nice to be reminded of that we've all faced certain things. And when you put something that's relatively trivial but seems heavy in the moment, is big in the moment, in context and in terms of what you overcame, it's almost like you have a superpower there in terms of, but sometimes you have to remind yourself because it's easy to get stuck in that chaos. You have to kind of pull yourself out of it and go, hey, remember when I got through that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I got through that. Surely I can get through this pretty straightforward thing, problem solving exercise.
Exactly. And I think sometimes we're all human and we can fall back into those pits of fear or exhaustion or all the things that happen if we're not taking good care of ourselves or we're or burning ourselves out or whatever. And I find that the faster I get back to doing that, stopping, getting still, remembering, I can get through this. This is one more iteration of challenge in life. I think when COVID hit, I kept thinking, my husband came into the kitchen and it happened to be my 50th birthday. It was March 19th.
Mm.
It was, 2020. We were supposed to go out for a big dinner and that was like the big lockdown day. And I just was standing in the kitchen just thinking, this is so eerily familiar. And my husband walked in right at that time and he said, this reminds me of the day you were diagnosed. And he said, we didn't know what that meant. We knew the next year was going to be hard. We knew that we were going to have to go through a lot of things. And we didn't know if you'd live or die, or we didn't know, what was coming. And I think that um, it set us up for COVID in a way that we really understood that the unknown is scary, but that this will end. This will come. There will be some ending to it, which gave us a little hope and comfort to know, okay, this is not going to be the rest of our lives. And sometimes is something as big as I mean, what's bigger than a worldwide pandemic? I mean, that was so major. But in our home, we were able to somehow compartmentalize a little bit to remind ourselves that, like your father said, this too shall pass.
Yeah, in that major uncertainty, staying kind of
Yeah,
calm in the middle of the storm.
right,
So
right.
so since you've been writing about your experience, as a writer myself, I know how cathartic that can be, regardless of what you do with the writing, in whatever kind of form it takes. How's that process been for you, and where is it at?
It has been absolutely cathartic. That's the word. I mean, it's so healing on so many levels. It is finished.
Awesome.
Yes, and I just finished writing my synopsis and query letter, ready to start shopping agents and publishers. Um, I am really excited. It has taken me quite some time. I think I started about 6 years ago, but I think because of the pandemic, I didn't write during that time because I was, cooking constantly for teenagers. I didn't have time to write. I was just making casseroles. But I think that some of the subject matter is painful, and I couldn't just go back in there regularly to edit, and I had to take some time in between those writings. And there's a twist. The hook of my book is really it's a memoir of a sister and brother close at heart, intersecting at the height of their own crises, with one desperately wanting to live and the other desperately wanting to die. And what the twist part is, so right after the double mastectomy, right before I was starting chemo, my brother, a 30-year dentist, showed up on our doorstep in a catatonic state. And we brought him in and took care of him. So this
That's
story has a
mm,
lot more to it than it's the juxtaposition of one kind of doing anything to reach for the light, and the other one
in,
just having a harder and harder time staying in this moment, in this world. I won't tell you how that ends. I'll
no.
leave that for the reader. But it is a story of love and hope and family and resilience and tragedy and forgiveness. It's all in there. And I really wanted to share this because I think there is so much fear in the world. And I think that there's such a misunderstanding of mental illness and still a stigma. So we watched as I'm going through, if you're a cancer patient, you're a hero. You're people have this feeling about cancer patients and they're amazed and they're and I was watching my brother suddenly afflicted with
An
we didn't know what
invisible, yeah,
invisible,
the invisible.
and he did not have that same kind of reaction from
Mhm.
others. And it made me so sad because I felt like his journey was making mine look much easier. There were so many protocols around breast cancer, and this man was like a guinea pig in a lot of ways. Things were being thrown at him, and anything to help, all within the effort to help him. But nobody knows, and they just didn't know what was going on with him, and it was a real journey to try to figure out what is happening with this man who, is a dentist and a brilliant guy, funny, gregarious, healthy, a cyclist, a
Mm.
major cyclist, like 200 miles in a day kind of thing. Um, so it was shocking. It's my big brother, didn't, it was terrifying. So this story is done with total truth and total love. And there's a lot of drama though too. Someone said it's a family thriller. Well, so it's there's a lot in there. And so I'm finished with the book. Like I said, I'm just at that precipice of like launching out there and starting to really realize the importance of putting out some social media reels and kind of getting. I realize now in the book, the publishing world, one agent told me, he said 15 years ago I would have signed you on the on the spot based on your writing. He said, but publishers are looking at one thing, and it's your author's platform
Mm.
and your social media reach. And so I'm doing the work to do that. And I thought, okay, even though that might be a little uncomfortable for me, not, I was an anchor person, but I'm not as savvy in this tech world as, my kids are. And so, but I'm embracing it. I'm just going with it. And it's fun actually.
Well, huge congrats to you first of all for getting it over the line. I know firsthand how hard it is, this writing process, but that's such a fascinating central relationship, this dichotomy between what you're experiencing and then the guy who seemingly has it all together but has this invisible kind of beast that he's taking on. That's such a beautiful
Mm.
dichotomy between the two. And I just, with whatever kind of stories I'm personally trying to tell, I've just shifted my focus to what are we trying to say. And with yours, you're trying to say a lot
Mm-hmm.
there.
Oh yeah.
um so did you have fairly routine writing practices, or you
Truthfully, no. I have to I was no, I was not discipline is one of the things that I'm working on in this lifetime. It's like
me
one
too.
of my yeah, okay, yeah. It's I'm just being honest. I had a funny way of doing it. I would set like let's say Tuesday, Thursday, I'm gonna write in the morning. And then if I started writing on Tuesday, but it was just, once I get in the groove,
Mm,
I don't want to stop. It's meditative. There's something about it that is just so and it's energizing. Like I
mm.
could just and then I would just want to write for 3 days. And I would be up late and it was like I couldn't stop. And then once I put it down, I felt like it was hard for me to pick it up again. So I would kind of do these little binge writing sessions. And I felt that was And it wasn't just when I was inspired. Sometimes it would take a while, take a few hours to even feel like I was getting in the groove. If I waited out those hours long enough, and then I started getting back into really it coming from the depths of me. And what's interesting about that, my editor, my developmental editor, Stuart Horwitz, said, he said, did you journal this whole time? And I said, no. I mean, once in a while would journal, but I think I have a really strong visual memory. And when I am tapping into that place that goes really deep into those those memories or those feelings, um it's like I'm back in the room.
Mm.
I'm back with my mom and dad or my brother, or I'm back in this space where we're having a conversation. And so that to me was both cathartic and scary because going back into some of this content can be actually debilitating if you're not ready to kind of sort through it. And there were times where I couldn't touch it for a month, or I needed to take a longer hiatus. And then I would come back in. And the more I came back in to the writing, back into a chapter over and over again, and trying to get it right and doing the editing, and I realized that I got to a place where I could do that more easily, and I could kind of come back in and not be so emotionally overwhelmed. So, and I'm not saying, I think I got it to a place where it's truly from my heart, it's palpable, but you can sit there and read it and take it in and know that, because obviously I really do want people to feel uplifted, and I do want people to feel like whatever comes you can overcome, even when you feel like an onslaught or you've dipped into some bizarre I call it an odyssey. I don't know what happened in those almost 10 years, 7 years. Um, it was a lot for us. And we kind of felt like up till I was 40 and up till that diagnosis that we led kind of charmed lives. I mean, our careers went and everyone was healthy. And sometimes you just don't see what's coming around the next corner.
For sure. And those waves can keep coming. But
Pounding.
yeah, there's sort of a level of athleticism that goes into writing, I think, because you're right, even if it's not necessarily about that like rigid kind of structure, but like you say, you're trying to get into a mode, you're trying to get into the groove of it. And sometimes the inspiration, I do think sometimes the inspiration doesn't come in the bar or whatever. It comes when you're putting yourself through that kind of uncomfortable, pinning yourself to the seat
Yes.
thing. But I think if you have a compulsion to write and a story like you do and something to offer, I think you find that which find the time which you obviously have, and it takes as long as it needs to. So that's very, very exciting. Exciting times.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. It really does feel, what you said is absolutely on the spot, that I always knew I would finish this book. Even if others, no one ever said I wouldn't, but but I always got the sense that, it was like, how's that book coming along? How's that book coming along? Um, I just knew I had to. And I know people use this term like, it was a calling, or I really do feel like, I couldn't go through all that and not do something with it, to help somebody else. I had that sense really early on, even when I was sitting in the chemo chair. I always think from the news desk to the chemo chair, it was like, this huge. It was just unbelievable. I would just sit there going, how did I get here? But somehow I already knew. I was kind of, being a photojournalist. I would take little pictures of the chemo bag, the drip. Just knowing, oh, I want to document that. Oh, I want to document radiation. There was something about the journalist in me that still wanted to capture these moments. And because I thought if I had a visual, I'll remember and it'll help me if I need to write a book or I need, there was something there that was already percolating early on. And I knew that I was absolutely gonna, if I made it through all this, I was absolutely gonna help other people on this journey. And so I felt that that book was always going to be done, even if it was going to take me a really long time, because I felt it was almost like a duty or a sense of I must do this. I must not let all of this be squandered. There was something in me that was like, I have to somehow help somebody. And I just had that feeling so early on, and it just bubbled and grew. So I'm grateful, by the grace of God, how the energy to kind of keep going and hitting that finish line. That was hard.
Mm.
You're right. It is hard. And to kind of keep going with it and trusting that, um, and it's okay. It's very vulnerable, to put yourself out there like that, and maybe not even just the content of the work, but just people knowing how I think and how I write and how, just sort of exposing myself on so many levels. I had to get through some of that too and realize I just got to a place where I was like, oh, I'm doing this. I don't, I'm gonna, whether I'm judged or not judged, or it doesn't matter. What matters is that the ultimate goal is to hopefully give somebody something that they can say, oh my gosh, I may not be going through these exact things, but I have gone through things that are similar or that's reminding me of this. And it's a reminder that you just keep going and you can overcome. So I hope that resonates down the road.
That calling you talk of it's a different kind of motivator, it's a nice motivator, but it's classic as storytellers when we're in a situation and we're sort of sitting outside ourselves in a way, like you were watching, and you're like, if it's a tough situation, you're like, well, I'm kind of watching this at the same time, and maybe in time I'll need to reflect on this.
Yeah.
It's funny when you're in something but you're observing what's going on at the the
Yes.
same time.
Yeah.
It's tradition on the show to have guests offer listeners some kind of challenge. So I'm really curious, is there anything, could be relative to anything, that has helped you, or on something small on a daily basis? Is there something that springs to mind?
Yes. I think right now, especially, I think a lot of people are feeling a little lost right now, or feeling like there's such a polarization of thought or attitude, or um, maybe um, maybe some fear about future. And I had a couple of really amazing mentors. I've had more than a couple of amazing mentors all throughout my life who just show up at the right times. Like, it's really such blessings in my life, these people. One of them said to me when I was making decisions about treatment, she said, follow the path of least regret. And that really stuck with me. I thought, my path of least regret might be very different from somebody else's path of least regret, but it gives you a little roadmap to think about something that I think automatically keeps you aligned with your values. Or to me, that's what it did. It was like, I'm going to make this decision, and whatever that, excuse me, whatever that path of least regret in my space, it just kind of helped bring me back to what's most important. I'm going to make this decision on, you know, information, facts, um, what my heart's telling me, all of these things. That was kind of a helpful thing. And the other thing I realized was that my greatest suffering came when I wished things were different. So my challenge is to, when we kind of get ahead of ourselves and we're sort of future tripping, or, we kind of could get a little overwhelmed, to try to just sit and just be in that moment and realize, all is okay right now in this moment. And that acceptance of where we are or where you are with anything. The faster we kind of get into, okay, this is what we have in front of us. It really helped me um, have a clearer mind for what steps am I going to take next. And when we're in fear and we're overwhelmed by fear, we're frozen. And then looking back, I realized it was the moments that I just would say, oh, I wish I didn't have cancer. I wish I didn't, I wish. And of course, we wish those things, but there's a point where you say, I do have it. And now what? Now what am I going to do? So I challenge, or my challenge is to try to take a deep breath when there's a feeling of overwhelm and to sit with the uncomfortable and get comfortable with the uncomfortable and just sit there for a moment and remember that wishing it were something else might make you feel more disconnected or more pain, and to stop and accept. And I've just found the faster I accept kind of what is, I have the ability then to go do what I need to do to make that situation better. I can think better. Um, I can take actual steps. And so I guess that was my thought when you proposed that. I thought I want just to challenge yourself to see if you can sit with that discomfort long enough to accept and then watch what might come.
That's awesome. Instead of like getting tangled in the weeds, that sitting with the discomfort, trying, having that level of acceptance can then bring about the clarity, and then you can put some small steps in place that aren't too overwhelming, as opposed to being tangled in all the other stuff and just in a kind of that snowballing. So that's an awesome challenge.
Okay.
Where where can people find you?
I think the best place. So I'm just having a website. It's almost done, and I'm probably a little late on that, but I'm there. I'm coming around here. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and it's Marilyn Getas Byrne, and that's Marilyn underscore Getas Getas underscore Byrne Byrne.
Awesome. Well, I'm very excited to read the book when
I'm
it's
excited.
out.
Yes, we will
Um, no,
stay.
because yeah, and I mean that because it's just such a cool dynamic you have there, and your story. So it's looking forward to that. And no, just all credit to you for your positivity and courage through these different sort of stages of your life. So I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing all that, because it's not an easy thing to do, to be able to talk about it like you are now. So
Well, and
thank you so much. Yeah.
I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, and your presence and your just the ease to sit here and talk with you. And I just really want to express my gratitude for this time and this opportunity to be able to share and on this platform. It's wonderful. So thank you.
There you go, guys. Honest ratings for the show on Apple are appreciated. If you have a guest suggestion, please feel free to reach out on my website at danielthomas.co. I'm also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.